Hello and welcome to the Crafty Corner. Today we're going to be playing with Crazing Collage Medium and making this fun card. Go ahead and pause to find out exactly what materials you're going to need. Alright, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today we're going to be looking at Collage Medium Crazing. This is a fun product that I like to use to get a more vintage look to some of my cards. To start with, we are going to take a piece of mixed media cardstock by Holtz, and I'm going to grab my stamping tool so that we can lay down some images on here before we start applying the crazing. I like using my Holtz Tonic stamp platform, but you can use whatever platform or stamping tool that you find works for you. So I'm going to put my paper down, add my magnets, and today I've decided to use Papillon CMS 106. I am loving these cute butterflies. These will be perfect for a focal point on a card. So placing the stamp down and picking it up with the platform, and now I will add some archival ink, and then we will be all good to stamp. So I'm just going to tap on some of the archival ink and make sure that I've got good coverage all over the stamp. The nice thing about the stamping platform, if for some reason I missed a bit of coverage with the ink, I can go back and add more. Then applying good pressure to the stamp, we'll see how our image came out. Not bad, but I'd like it a little bit darker, so I'm going to go back and add a little bit more archival ink. Okay, that looks good, and I'll do a second stamp to make my image nice and dark. Alright, now I'm happy with that. We'll take this stamp off, move our magnets around, and I'm going to use the text stamp that came with this stamp set. And I'm going to have that overlap the butterflies just a little bit, and that will give us a fun background to work on. Okay, picking up the stamp, getting the archival ink, and going back in to stamp up this image. Okay, that looks pretty good. And this one I'm not going to be very picky about how clear it is. This is just for the background, so if it's a little bit even in places, that could actually look pretty neat. Perfect, and we're just going to go with that. And I will set the stamping platform aside. Now we're going to add our Collage Medium Crazing. So for this, I prefer to work with my fingers. This is completely up to you, however you want to work. Do what works best. We've moved this over to the craft mat section of the media mat. I prefer to work over here because if I get some crazing onto here, it'll just peel off, or I can even just wipe it off quickly with water. So I'm going to take a good scoop out of the jar, and we're just going to rub the crazing medium all over our image. I'm spreading it kind of like butter on toast. We don't want a lot in places, but we want it fully covered. And you're just going to kind of feel with your finger to make sure that the medium is spreading evenly on your page. I'm using a fairly generous amount, but I am covering the entire surface. Okay, just checking to make sure I don't have any funny lumps and just smoothing it out. If you want more texture, you could use a paintbrush to get some interesting brush strokes. But for this card, I want kind of a smooth finish when it crazes. Okay, so now the collage medium is on there and we can see that it's there by the little sheen as we tilt this card base from side to side. We're going to let this sit now overnight. Depending on where you're living, drying time is going to take a different amount of time depending on the environment. I live in Lower Canada in Quebec, and our humidity tends to be fairly high. For my craft room, I have to keep it temperature controlled, or when I use the Crazing product, it takes a lot longer to dry. The humidity it won't draw out the moisture from the product. So I actually have a dehumidifier running in my craft room, keeping the room at 30% humidity. But I'm going to give this extra time to make sure it's completely dried and giving the product enough time to do the fun little crazing lines. All right, see you in a little bit. Okay, now that our collage medium is dry, it is time to add some color. And let's take a look. Ooh, I can already see some interesting little crackle lines going, but in order to really see these, we'll need to add some color. Now for color, I've decided to use some Distress Crayon. So I'm going to add a bit of color over here on the glass portion of the mat, and I'm going to scribble down some colors in my boxes. Not a whole lot, just a little bit to get me started, and we'll start adding some color to this background. I've decided to use some Wilted Violet, Lucky Clover, Evergreen Bough, Peacock Feathers, and some Mermaid Lagoon. Later on, we will add in some walnut stain to make those crackles really pop. But for now, let's grab our water brush and start adding in some color. For this, I'm not really trying to make a picture. I just want to add some color down and get a bit of a background going. So I'm going to be a little bit haphazard and just scribble on the color. Nothing fancy. And I'm just adding bits of color in different places and letting them blend together when they happen to meet up. The nice thing about the glass mat is that you can also use it as a palette in order to house your colors while you are making backgrounds. And as I'm adding the color, I'm starting to notice that more of my crazing lines are starting to pop. You can see them when we bring the camera down just a bit closer. This is pretty neat because this is where we get to see the fun of this particular medium. But they will pop even more when we add a contrasting color over the top. For this particular background, I decided to go with cool colors, so greens, purples, and blues. I love doing backgrounds because they then become the foundation for quick and easy cards. And if you've got the time, do a big batch of these and then you'll have some backgrounds all prepped and ready for when you've got a moment to create. I know for me, I like to have a bunch of things pre-made. That way I can just dive into my stash, grab some things, and then just make. Okay, and we are almost done. I've just got a couple of little spots to brush up, and we will have all of our color down on our background. Okay, now that the background is covered, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and I'm going to grab my walnut stain crayon. Now for this part, we're going to scribble a little bit of this down lightly over the surface of the card. Just like that. Now I'm going to take my finger and quickly start smudging. The smudging is going to help bring out the lines that are in the crazing. And I'll just add bits of crayon to different parts of the card and keep smudging that in order to get my lines to pop. I love that as the crayon starts to catch on the little crazing lines and the lines start to pop. And there we go. That is our background, and we can see all those fantastic little crazing lines just popping because of the added walnut stain. And anytime you see a spot that you think needs a little bit more help, just add a bit more walnut stain and those lines will start to emerge. Okay, next we're going to finish this off by making it into a card. I have got a few things off to the side. We are going to quickly fold a card base. This card base is 10 by 4. Just quickly fold that in half. I like to keep a bunch of these pre-cut and laying around so that I always have something to use when I'm ready to make a card. And quickly grabbing my ATG gun, I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of this panel. And then I'll just stick that right onto the card. Okay, and we'll stick that right onto the card front. All right, now I'm going to add a few flowers to this and some leafy greens. For that, I'm going to grab my collage medium. I'm going to use the fine tipped needle for this one. I just find it easier to put the collage medium onto some of the more delicate die cuts when gluing. These I cut from Wildflower stems 1 and 2. Just using up some bits and pieces for some die cuts that would be ready to go whenever I have a card that needs some focal points. There, I'm liking that. And for the last piece on this card, I'm going to add some washi tape. And you can add whatever sorts of embellishments you want. It's just fun to make some backgrounds and make a couple of cards. That looks good, and I will just trim that off with my scissors. And there we go. A nice, easy card to make, and then you can add whatever sentiment is appropriate down at the bottom. And this would be an example of how to use the Crazing collage medium. Hope you guys had fun, and until next time, happy crafting!